Today I want to talk about one of the most important principles for Christians when it comes to our interactions with non-Christians, and particularly with those who are trying to do things that we really know we shouldn't be doing. Now, obviously, Christians need to be in regular contact with non-Christians. How else can we help seek and save the lost? And we certainly were in that situation at one point ourselves, or somebody in our family was. Somebody brought the good news to our family somewhere back down the line, whether we're talking about our great-great-grandparents or whether we're talking about ourselves. And so this topic is not at all saying that we somehow need to be exclusive. However, when it comes to important plans, when it comes to trying to figure out a direction in our lives or how something important is going to work, we need to be very cautious on negotiating with wicked people or compromising with them. And there's a couple of scriptures that speak to that, a number, but a couple I want to look at today. One's found in 2 Corinthians 6 and verse 14. And it says, "Do not be yoked together with unbelievers. For what do righteousness and wickedness have in common? Or what fellowship can light have with darkness?" Well, that's a great point. We're not to be yoked together. It's that gives us that picture of two oxen or two horses teamed together and yoked together in the same harness. If they're going in the same direction, if they want to go in the same direction, they're going to be able to pull very effectively whatever load they have to pull. But if one of them wants to go one direction and the other wants to go another, you're going to have chaos and you're eventually going to end up in a big wreck. And this is what God is talking about when it comes to our interactions with people. Whenever we're doing something that is critically important, we need to make sure that we're not trying to negotiate with wickedness to try and arrive at some sort of a compromise, because a compromise with wickedness really is wickedness. And so God just says, don't be yoked together unequally with unbelievers. Righteousness and wickedness should not have anything to do with one another. They cannot work together for opposite purposes, I believe is one of the main lessons from this. One of my favorite books, I'm starting to read it again. It's called The Light and the Glory. If you've never heard of this book, I'd recommend that you get it if you have any interest in history, and particularly the history of the founding of America. They start with the times of Columbus and him coming here, and they go all the way through the founding fathers. And they talk about that time in between where America was struggling to find its identity. And it really was a struggle at many times between good and evil. And as most of us know from our study of history, the Puritans played a great role in this. Not only were they trying to escape religious persecution, but they were also trying to get to a point where they could operate as a church in the way that they felt like they needed to, without the interference of some of their religious leaders who appeared to have lost their way and lost their focus, and who, instead of trying to just live as Christians and do what they could to advance the kingdom of God, the kingdom of Christ, these leaders back in Europe were getting more and more involved with political things and power struggles, and it was discouraging to many of the Puritans. And so it wasn't just religious persecution they were leaving, it was also this leaving behind of some of the leaders that had lost their way. And when they got here, while they certainly had their own unique struggles, as did the ones in Europe, for the most part, they had some pretty impressive results. Some of the colonies that were established by non-Christian groups met with disaster during this same time that the Puritans seemed to thrive. And so for many years, as a matter of fact, probably until about the mid-20th century, whenever we looked at history books and whenever we learned history within school, we were looking at a group of people who were very favorably viewed. And then something happened. And what happened was that there were people who were really tired of the idea of us being a godly nation. And so they started putting the Puritans in a less and less favorable light, until the point that the main thing they focused on or tried to convince people of was that these were just a group of unloving witch burners. Nothing could be farther from the truth. Did they have a time or two where they made some mistakes? And they surely did. But the other historians knew about this as well, and yet the overall picture of the Puritans was very favorable, because it was their influence that really did influence the godly founding of this nation. And so one of the points that the authors, Peter Marshall and David Manuel, made in The Light and the Glory was, when you have people who do not agree with the direction that you've been going in, very often they will skew the past direction. And certainly past history has been skewed. And so religion in America, something that was very much honored and admired for so many years, has really gotten a bad name. And any mistake that religious people made over the years seems to be amplified, and anything that they accomplished that was successful is muted. And so this is something that really does speak to the idea of not being yoked together with unbelievers. Unbelievers have their own agenda, as do we. There's no question about that. Hopefully for Christians, our agenda is to spread the news, the good news of the kingdom, in order that we might be able to help people. Some people get misled on that, and some people use this mode of Christianity as just something for them to become wealthy or powerful. We know that. But most Christians very much are humble people who want to be left alone, who just want to do the right thing before God. And so when we are making plans, and now let's fast forward to where we are today. In our nation, we have decided on a change in direction. And the headlines just seem to be filled with people who are being left behind, they say. When you look at some of the things that we ended up deteriorating to, an open acceptance of abortion, an open acceptance of sexual immorality, an open acceptance of illegal drug use, and including a promotion of taking care of people who are involved with this so that they can continue to engage in their sin. There's a big difference between helping somebody out who's hit rock bottom, who now wants to do right, and helping out somebody who has hit rock bottom but wants to go back to being able to do wrong, but a little more comfortably. But anyway, our headlines are filled with the people who have been removed from power. That includes everything from drag queens who were reading to our kids in public schools and libraries to generals who were men who were wearing skirts and high heels. It's just people who wanted to live in a certain way. And now they want a place at the table. After they kicked out the righteous people during their time of power, they want a place at the table to have some input. And we might be inclined to do that. After all, that's the democratic thing to do, isn't it? It's the fair thing to do, isn't it? But when you think about it, if we are yoking ourselves together with unbelievers, we're essentially negotiating with Satan in order to let him get more of his way. And so we need to be very careful with that. In the first Psalm, verse 1, it starts off by saying this: blessed is the man. Blessed is twofold. One, blessed means happy, but two, blessed also means favor from God. And so we're happy because we're going to receive favor from God. So this should cause us to give this idea some attention. Blessed is the man who does not walk in the counsel of the wicked, or stand in the way of sinners, or sit in the seat of mockers. It's this same idea, isn't it? You want to go in the right direction? Well, don't seek counsel from those who have already said they want to go in the wrong direction. Don't seek to negotiate with that side of people who want to go in a direction that is opposite of the one you want to go in. If you've got a madman that's driving a car and he's about to go off a cliff, you get the steering wheel away from him and you don't let him sit next to you and help you steer after that. You get him as far away from the steering device as you possibly can. And so this is something very important for us to understand. If we're going to try and go in a good direction, whether it is something as big as our nation, whether it's something that's a little bit smaller but just as important, such as public education, or smaller still, but again, equally important, choosing who we're going to be partners with in business, who we're going to marry, who we're going to do anything that requires a mutual agreement, we need to be very careful not to yoke ourselves with unbelievers, because from God's perspective, the righteous should not have anything to do with wickedness. Do we want them to stop being wicked? Of course we do. Do we want them to repent of what they're doing and be saved? Of course we do. But negotiating with them to allow more wickedness and more unrighteous behavior is not going to accomplish that. It may make you be on a more friendly basis with them, but it's going to be something that's going to be a worthless partnership, because instead of trying to do the right thing, you're just trying to get along, no matter with whatever direction that the wrong seems to be at the time. When God says that the man is blessed who does not walk in the counsel of the wicked, the reason for that should be very clear. When we are going in a bad direction, we're not going to be receiving God's favor in that. We're not going to be receiving God's help in that. And the reason that sin is because it creates so much turmoil, so much hatred, and so much unhappiness. And so you can't be happy if you're going in a direction that's wrong. If we're thinking somehow that we can negotiate with the wicked as we try and determine the right path, the best direction for us to be going now, we're fooling ourselves, and we're violating a very important scriptural principle. The righteous and the wicked don't have anything in common, and so we shouldn't try and bond together and compromise on the things that are very important, that are most important in life. A lot of innocent people have suffered, sometimes the most innocent in our society, because the righteous wanted to do the fair thing and ended up compromising with unrighteousness. That time needs to be in the past. That type of thinking needs to stop. Do we want to love those who are involved in sin? Of course we do, but we do not want to help them, to compromise with them in order to allow them to continue in that sin, or at least in such a way as to where it will affect and harm the innocent. Well, that's the message for today. I hope it gives you something to think about. I believe we need to be very prayerfully, cautiously approaching this type of a conversation. If we don't handle it right, again, we're going to look like a bunch of witch burners. But if we don't handle it right in the other direction, we're going to just end up in the long run being as wicked as those who want us to compromise with. So anyway, that's the message for today. I appreciate your listening. I hope we'll see you tomorrow. God bless.